Welcome to the Psychosocial Safety Summit, coming to you in October in Brisbane this year. I wanted to do things differently this year and introduce you to these incredible speakers and partners before we arrive. You need to know these people, and if you haven't got your ticket yet, jump on the link below. Now, today I want to introduce you to Kerrie Sellen, who's the Director at Restorative Journeys and Practice Institute Australia. Thank you so much for joining us, Kerrie, and thank you so much for being involved and partnering in the summit.
Oh, my pleasure, Nicole, and I can't wait to be part of the experience in Brisbane.
Can you tell us about your incredible background and experience?
Yeah, look, I guess my experience started, I guess as an early practitioner when I first got into my role as a youth justice officer and working with young people in a whole range of different, kind of mostly the tricky spaces. And I guess my experience was as I journeyed through that as a practitioner, got into like team leader roles and leadership roles, I was watching our industry really struggle to support those people who turned up every day to do the cold face work of working in sometimes with really challenging customers and communities. And I was fascinated working with challenging people, but we didn't know how to look after our own workforce and didn't know how to engage our own staff and what that looked like. And I went in and out of government to building NGOs and different organisations, and the same thing kind of seemed to be happening over and over again. And I talk about it being the duck syndrome, yeah? You know, when you see that duck gliding across the water, it looks ever so peaceful and calm. And, like there's nothing to see here. We've got it sorted. We've got it handled. And, but realistically, underneath the water, its little legs are going really fast. And I felt like that in the industry. I felt like I turned up every day and I was a good practitioner and I made a great difference. But really explicitly what my role in that was and how do I support others, that was the challenge. And the truth is, for me, I left the industry. I became international marketing manager for a friend's web-based online company, and I was asked to come back and start an organisation from scratch and to work with young people in communities who were, having a range of challenges and situations. And I said no a few times, but then I said yes. I said yes, but, and one of my buts was things had to be done differently than ever been done before, because I was watching the staff turnover, the burn and churn of really good people, the inconsistency in practice because of the increased turnover of staff, the cost of constantly having to employ people and feel like you're starting again and again and again. And so I said things had to be done really, really differently than they've ever been done before. And I remember the CEO and the chairman of the board asking me, Kerrie, what does the difference look like? And I said, to be honest, I have no idea. I knew it had to do with people. I knew it had to do with relationships. And I knew that maybe intuitively I was practicing in those ways, but I wasn't doing it explicitly. So I started the organisation from this very kitchen table, and word got out and employees started to come, but I was looking for a difference. And a colleague of mine introduced me to somebody, and his name's Terry O'Connell, and he's actually a police officer in New South Wales for 30 years. And he had a different way of operating. He had a different way of dealing with conflict, with community in really tricky spaces. And that was that thing called restorative practices, and effectively, I say to people now, park the word restorative. It's about relationships. How do we build and sustain healthy relationships? And how do we deal with conflict when it occurs? Because what we know is conflict is part of every human connection. Whether we're at work, whether we're at home, conflict is normal, combat is optional. So, yeah, I went on this journey of one of my other ways of talking to people about it is what we don't repair, we repeat. If we just use systems and processes and service the HR requirements of our organisation, that's when we're going to get stuck with the work cover and the HR issues and the costs increase. So I went about embedding this thing called restorative processes and practices in everything we did. We changed every policy and procedure. And I guess to get to the end game, we actually were able to achieve Australia's 6th best workplace culture, we participated for 5 years in Great Places to Work Australia, which is a Business Review weekly and Great Places to Work study initiative, not a competition, a study into workplace culture. And I don't think we started with that as the end in mind, but we very quickly learned that it started with us and each other. And that was a fundamental shift in how we built the organisation and how we developed the policies and procedures and how we got there. And I guess one of the things I'm probably most proud of is that we were the only NGO in the top 300, and with working with along big corporate companies and finance companies. But at the end of the day, what I learned was the only difference was we just paid our staff a lot less, so we had to even get better at relationships. Yeah. But at the end of the day, what I worked out is that all workplaces are having the same complexities and same issues. And so that's my kind of background and how I got to wanting to work in this space and share it with others.
Yeah, and you do incredible work. And without stealing your thunder, because I have been to your training sessions, I've seen you speak, and you've been in the Dark Sides of Work Summit. So I absolutely love the work you do, and the work you do is in the toughest parts of communities, of workplaces, of schools, of society, and the way you're able to turn things around and build those relationships in the most difficult parts of what we deal with is absolutely incredible. And that's what you do in Restorative Journeys. Is that right? Can you give us a bit more information about what you do there?
Yeah, I guess and starting with the end in mind, which is how I start with organizations and schools and those really complex places these days. And I guess it doesn't matter where you go in life, relationships are central, yeah. We have to be able to navigate relationships. It doesn't matter whether we're at the shops, work, home, and that became my drive and my passion to share that story. I never, ever, ever started my career thinking I was going to have a training consultancy company and taking organizations and companies on journeys around how to engage staff and build those environments where people thrive. And so that's what Restorative Journeys is about now. It's a company that takes other companies and organizations, and as you said, schools, and I do a lot of work in some pretty tricky spaces and places. And at the end of the day, we all have the same affect biology. We're all hardwired the same as human beings. And Restorative Journeys is now about taking others, exactly what my name says, Restorative Journeys. I don't have the answers, they do. What I can do is walk alongside organisations and companies, and as a training consultancy company, we walk alongside organisations and companies around how do they create their own journey? How do they create the conditions and the environment for their staff to be connected, to deal with conflict when it occurs, because it's normal. It's going to happen in every organisation, in every community, in every society, in every family. Every relationship comes with conflict. So I'm all about how do we understand why we have the conflict we have, and therefore how do we deal with that in a healthy way? How do we repair the conflict so we don't repeat, so that we're not stuck in those ruts and HR are dealing with the same things over and over again?
Yeah.
So yeah,
And
go on.
oh, I was just going to say, like, if you're watching this and thinking, well, I've got this major conflict and I don't see how this can be fixed. Like, I've seen you turn incredibly difficult situations around and help other people do the same thing. So it's not about, oh gosh, I need Kerrie, which people love to do. But they can do it themselves as well, which just empowers you to be able to build those relationships and not worry so much about conflict, and know that you can repair the harm if it happens in your workplace or in your community or family.
You're spot on, Nicole. It's so important. And my biggest lesson is the explicit nature of the practice. And starting with the end in mind, I need to be gone. Yeah, like I can take people on a journey, but if I can explicitly share what I know and what I know works and how to fundamentally implement that in their organisation and make it part of their DNA through their policies and procedures. This is not a thing to do. This is a way of being. This is a way of building an organisation that's connected, that has staff that are engaged. But that comes with that is conflict. And often we don't know what to do with that conflict, like myself. And I built HR systems and processes just like everybody else when I built these organisations. But until we started to put relationships at the centre of all of those, that's when and explicitly teaching everybody, having a consistent language and understanding of why we behave the way we do, and therefore how do we come together and have those really tricky conversations to do that repair piece.
Yeah. And if this was taught in, one-on-one, 101 management, or in schools, or both, then the world would just be a different place. And I know that that's what you're doing. You're doing it one workplace, one community, one school at a time. And was there anything specific that made you start Restorative Journeys? Was there a specific event or reason to start?
Well, interesting you say that, because the organisation I built from scratch, and we ended up with 95 staff servicing 1,000 young people and families across South Australia. We had 7 offices based both regionally as well as metro, and it was that experience of creating the conditions for staff to be connected, for staff to have, like, we spend so much time at work, and we as companies that we build organizations and companies, we spend so much time and money building organizations, and the staff turnover, and I just see us doing trauma and damage and harm to people, not because we're bad people and we want to, we just don't know what else to do. So I just became really, really passionate about how do I share this with others? How do I share the need to be vulnerable? But what does that look like in an organization on a daily basis? How does this practice, unfold on a daily basis? What I loved about the journey we went on, we learned very quickly that we had to proactively have processes and structures to build healthy, connected teams. But then how did we deal with conflict and harm when it occurs? Because that's going to happen. So it's that proactive and reactive. And that's what my passion was driven by. It started off wanting great outcomes for young people and families and communities, and it's still driven by that. But if we don't start with ourselves and each other, then we're not going to get the outcomes in our companies, our organisations, and our schools that we're looking for. So we were able to do things like, reduce our staff turnover to less than 2%. We became an employer of choice. We had people knocking at our door. We didn't have to advertise for 5 years to get one employee. And the other thing that happened, because it was word of mouth and people wanted in, we were able to get like-minded people who had our values and had our belief, and it just becomes so much more productive and for everybody. People went above and beyond the call of duty because they felt connected to the value, the vision, but they also explicitly knew. It didn't matter whether it was myself as the state manager or the CEO. I had the same responsibility and expectation to show up in those relationships and be authentic, just like I had the expectation of my staff.
Mm. And you not only do the amazing work you do in Restorative Journeys, but you're also the director of Practice Institute Australia as well. Can you share a little bit more about what you do there?
Yeah, so again, it was born from a really basic need of needing to have a way of sharing our practice and our trainings and the offerings we have to different communities and schools and organisations and companies. But now it's driven by other practitioners, explicit practitioners who have significant stories and journeys that they want to share with others. So it becomes a vehicle to help people connect to what do they need. And we don't have lots of programs sitting on shelves. We have explicit practice frameworks and ways of sharing this journey, and we walk alongside of people, and we custom build experiences for companies and organizations. And PIA gives us, Practice Institute gives us that vehicle to be able to custom build and walk alongside of our customers to share our framework.
So I think that there will be some people who won't be able to wait until the summit to meet you and work with you. What's the best way for them to connect with you and get involved?
Yeah, look, we obviously, the Practice Institute of Australia, we have a website, and you can certainly reach out and through that way. And it's also Restorative Journeys. You can contact me directly through going to my website, and you'll have all my contact details there. People are welcome to phone me, email me. Everybody has a different preference around how you communicate and how we engage. So yeah, I'd be really open to people reaching out, and certainly happy to have a conversation.
Fantastic. And before we jump off, I'd love for you to give us a little teaser as to what you'll be talking about in the summit.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to be talking about those explicit things. What explicitly do we do through our policies and procedures? What did it look like on a daily basis in our practice? How did we create the conditions to become Australia's 6th best workplace culture, where we had, huge staff engagement, where we built engaged staff teams, where we become an employer of choice? So I'm going to teach people about their little echidna. Yeah, let's just leave it at that for now. And what that looks like, and how this became a really significant visual part of our organisation's journey and story. And My excitement is around how do we have a consistent language and understanding? How do we see people for who we are rather than the stories we create about other people? And I'm about demystifying how do we do this? How do we stop those water cooler conversations? How do you engage your staff to increase the viability of what you're trying to achieve as an organization or as a company? And so I've got lots of really practical hands-on tools, and I'm going to be bringing some really practical strategies and explicit practice kits and sharing how we use those on a daily basis.
Yeah, and you are really changing the world for workplaces and communities, and you are honestly one of my most favorite people in the world. Thank you for everything that you're doing, but also thank you for being involved in the summit and for partnering with us. We are definitely aligned in our values, and every time we chat, I get so excited about what you're doing and what we can do together. So I really appreciate it, and I can't wait to meet you in person in Brisbane.
Brilliant, Nicole. Thanks so much. I'm really excited about being part of the summit.
Thanks, Kerrie.